Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's episode. Hopefully, my voice is clear and the audio behind this episode is also adjusted to my voice. Please let me know in the chat section if there's issues. This evening, I wanted to speak about an idea that I really don't know what to do with. And so, I was thinking of the statement, endless journeys to the end of never. It fascinates me that we are on a rock in the middle of nowhere, floating in space, and we were unconsciously being part of nature, a sort of creature. And at some point we began having the development of memory and an ability to use that memory to project notions of the future. There's some scholars that when they speak about the future, they say it was a discovery, not that there's going to be discoveries in the future, that the future was a discovery, the ability of a creature to wonder about moments ahead. Now, when we look at life so far, there is a distinction we make between animals of lesser species and human beings. And that distinction is simply that animals are moment to moment, but the human mind has an ability to fathom many moments ahead, as if many animals are not aware. Some philosophers suggest this, that it could be that they're not aware that they will die one day. Think of a young child without a personality, having no sense of like it's going to grow old and in some sense pass away. So we as human beings have the privilege, after 4.5 billion years of evolution, to consider how we began, which is the privilege of memory, and use these memories to see a probability of the future. And this is where, if we consider, the dimensions we consider are really important here. If a person considers that they're just a physical entity, then the physicality began at the moment of birth and it ends at the moment of death. But if there were additional dimensions, components to how we are being intelligent in the moment that surpass the physical framework, what would that imply about the type of journey that we as creatures have here? You see, everybody is surviving to the fittest. The whole species is inspired by continuing and passing down like a torch a genetical pattern. And this genetical pattern, its vitality, first it has a physiological environment it needs to take care of. That means it's like there's the physical component, but after a person, a human being, has physically survived, that means imagine a child in a country where there's poverty or war, and that child somehow gets out of that messed up landscape, And so it's now, let's say that child comes to the modern world, and that child is no longer physically being challenged by the forces of nature. It has a sort of control. And ability to maintain its physiological problems. So I, though, as I have existed, it's as if human beings are the only creatures I would say, on this planet, that it's not enough that we just exist. We have to do something with our existence. There is a sort of purpose put into place. When you look at back in the day, creatures or even lesser species, their purpose is just instinctual. That means it's as if they are a genetical program, as if like imagine somebody created a program, and this program was like, react to your environment, respond to the stimulus of your environment, right? And this program is just doing this. But human beings have an ability, while being inside in a physical environment, to consider non-physical environments. The awareness of death is really what separates the human being, with the human, with the lesser species of animals. It's like nobody says, like, are insects depressed? It's like nobody says, are like polar bears, happy. It's all about their relationship with their physical environment. We as human beings have a relationship with another environment, a psychological environment. It's as if in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, this pyramid of social living, where it's as if you take care of your physiological it's as if there's a physiological level, and you complete that level, you get to a psychological level, you complete that level, and eventually you get to a point where it is self-actualization, where it's like, after your body is balanced and after your mind is balanced, what do you do with this balanced mind and body, So far, I'm trying to paint this picture that we have an ability to fathom the future, and when we think of the future in a physical sense, we think of extinction. Now, because we have somehow, in evolution, object became a subject to itself. There's mysteries around that, by the way. I personally consider there's a subjective evolution, but they don't teach that anywhere. Certain mystics kept the algorithm alive, but if you experientially wonder about what is going on, it's as if every human being is living two lives. It's not a singular life. And it's strange because it's kind of like the yin-yang symbol. We have two different brain hemispheres, but it's like one brain. And so there seems to be a sort of objective self that it's like it requires images to articulate itself, and a subjective self which is not just the images, but it's about the destination of the images, or how the images have come about so far. You see, emotions still remain as part of the mystery of life, simply because we don't know what the mind is. This whole time our species has been like, yeah, I got a mind, where do you think my personality is right now? But we don't know what the mind is, and the mind is not an object, and it can't be a singular subject because various subjects come and go. So the mind is in some sense left as a sort of question mark that is watching the objects and subjects change. There's a very beautiful story that finds this moment from Zen Buddhism. And there was a patriarch of Buddhism, I believe he was the patriarch of Buddhism to Japan, by the name of Bodhidharma. And Bodhidharma, long story short, he scolds an emperor, because of the emperor's ignorance, ignorant desire for merit, and he leaves them. Okay, so I'll say the story. Pretty much Bodhidharma enters Japan, and there was an emperor there, and this emperor had spread around Buddhism, had created Buddha statues, and so Buddhist ideology was everywhere. So the emperor had done something actually very interesting. Now, what happens is when Bodhidharma enters the hall, the palace hall, and the emperor is sitting on his throne with his councilmen beside him and whatnot, the emperor looks at Bodhidharma and he's like, Bodhidharma, I've made so many statues of Buddha. I've spread so many Buddhic texts and teachings to people. You know, what's the merit? What do I get from this? And the emperor gets the unexpected. Bodhidharma looks at him and scolds the emperor and says, all that you have done is foolishness, you know, and he leaves. And then the emperor is getting angry. How dare some random foreigner tell me, tell me I'm a fool, I'm the king, and then it's at that moment where the wise councilman of the emperor looks at him and he's like, sir, wait a minute. And Bodhidharma leaves, and the councilman explains to the emperor that it's not that what he did was wrong. It was the way, the attitude he had in asking, like, did I get something from it? That was really the issue. What made Bodhidharma mad. So anyways, Bodhidharma leaves the palace, goes outside. The palace had big walls, and from outside of the palace, like outside of the kingdom's walls, he goes and he just stares at, like, his forehead inches away from the wall, and he goes into this very deep meditation and samadhi state. Long story short, there's this guy who hears Bodhidharma is here and he's this enlightened being that can resolve issues. It's like free therapy sessions. Oh my god. I'm kidding. So what happens is there's this man who has an issue, a problem, and this problem is very intense. And one night, there's Bodhidharma's just meditating, he's in the Samadhi, and this man, like, he's traveled far, he comes to Bodhidharma, and he says, Bodhidharma, please help me. And Bodhidharma is such an intense meditation where he's not even a personality in that moment, but the man keeps saying, please help me, and then what the man does, something strange, and this is a story I'm relaying. What the man does at the time is he cuts his left hand and stands in front of Bodhidharma and says, I will be loyal to you and please, like, help me. And so Bodhidharma steps out of his samadhi and he looks at this guy, it's like without a hand. And he says, guys, this is the story. Back in the day, things were a bit savage. So what happens is Bodhidharma says, what's the problem? And this guy looks at Bodhidharma and says, Bodhidharma, I can't sleep at night. My mind is restless. That's what he says. And he says, please pacify my mind. Please pacify my mind. That's the exact statement he says. Bodhidharma looks at the guy and he says, okay, I'll pacify your mind. But first you have to bring your mind here. Bring your mind right here in front of me and I'll pacify it for you. And this man is sent into a shock. That means his mind has been the source of his problems, the sort of his illness, as if we say mental illness, right? And Bodhidharma is telling them, okay, you have an issue, you have a mental illness, bring your mind, put your mind in front of me and I'll pacify your mind, I'll fix your mind. And so this man can't find his mind, and he looks at Bodhidharma after looking around and not knowing what to do, and he's like, I can't find it. And Bodhidharma takes one, looks at him and stares at him and says, there, your mind is pacified. It's as if the realization of something that wasn't there, that was the source of the suffering. That means you can say two types of suffering. There's a physical suffering where it's like something happens to your body, but the psychological suffering has to do with the attitude of the type of intelligence you are and how you are causally observing how things are affecting you. Now, one point that we can take from this, extract from this story, the moral of it was that it's like when you realize your mind is not an object and subject, you're released from the way that you think you're suffering. But if we think about when the guy was suffering, what was going on? The mind was being another narrative of the world, another dimension of how things are happening while they are physically happening. Now, the title of this episode, where I say endless journeys to the end of never, right? This is where it comes, it's as if on two levels I am seeing this. First of all, what is the endless journey if it's in regards to the body? That means if it's in regards to the body, we're considering immortality. And we're considering also the immortality of the species, where so far our species has been immortal, in the sense that it's as if we keep passing our DNA on, and it's like there's still human beings around. When extinction happens, that immortal vibe of our species goes away. But if we have technology, and this technology assists in the physical survival of the individual to a point where bodies are not dying, do you know, or in some sense the human species cannot be wiped out by the forces of nature, right? It's as if we not only become interstellar, not only do we have sky cities and then we become interstellar, it's as if we overpopulate the whole universal sector. It's as if the purpose of life, I've talked about this in some of the other episodes, where I've said it's as if like the purpose of life in the future is only to have sex all over the universe. It's like, what else can it be if technology is doing all the work? You know, it would just be sex and creativity, pretty much. You know? So, it would also be an endless journey, right? This endless journey can be seen if now I said there's another level there in regards to the mind, right? Now the thing about the mind is that when it is not in the room, there is no world. We all know this because when we go to sleep, it's as if the moment vanishes. The world vanishes, and then let's say you awaken in a dream state, or you just step out of deep sleep as if you logged out of conscious life, and then you log back in when you wake up. Now, if we think about that consciousness, the mind's doing, you know, even though the mind is not an object or subject, but our free will is coming from somewhere. It is happening as something, I shouldn't say something, but it's happening as some force. So there's a force behind us, especially as creatures with a developed brain compared to all the other species here, that it's as if there's a force behind our eyes that keeps going forward. But to what aim? To what aim? How long can we do this? If we consider there's an additional dimension of intelligence, And if we take seriously the parallels and the idea of energy that cannot be created or destroyed and transforms from form, that changes from form to form, and if we take in this notion that the Buddhist approach and the yogic approach took, that there's a sort of reincarnation for a transmigratory soul, and the soul is being defined as that which is not an object or a subject. It's as if the body can only reproduce. What else can a biological entity that is being passed down from generation to generation do? Either we turn into machines, either we don't exist, or in some sense we continue this game of biology of reproduction. But if you were to think about the mind and this whole notion of this transmigratory soul, it could completely shift the context of the universe. And this is where I get closer to the subtitle, where I say, could space be a veil? And so if we take this notion of the soul, in the Upanishads they had this saying where they would say the seer of the seen is unseen. So it's as if they're like, even though there's this traditional notion of body, mind, soul, or we have in modern times body and mind, in ancient times they saw body, mind, and then they saw the individual soul, and then they saw the collective soul. The collective soul is in some sense seen as, the Parabrahman is seen as God, do you know, or as the creator, or as that which is inconceivable. You know, so it's as if there was this, take this notion as if you're a Buddhist and you're like, yo, what is it though that's going from life to life, right? To the yogic mind, it would be like the Atman, the individual soul that within a greater space is moving. Now, if this idea of the soul is just taken as an unknown witness, that means right now, as I'm speaking to you, I'm going to explain to you how you can consider me as a spiritual person. Like, my body is known. I would say 100% known, let's say. Then my mind is sometimes known, sometimes unknown. There's some things I know, I can see their shape, I can see their attributes, but there's some times where it's as if it's just unknown, it's as if something is happening, but we can't tell what it is, or the memory doesn't have familiarity with it. Now, if we take the notion that the soul is 100% unknown, it's as if there is an unknown witness of the known body. And what the known body does is as if the mind is the bridge between the known and the unknown dimensions of intelligence. If we consider the endless journey of the known self physical advancement, if we consider the endless journey of that which is attributeless, or that which is watching reality, it's as if it could be that after the body is dismissed from the realm, we are just left as sight, as space. I don't know how to say it. It's like the sight, not the sight of space, but space seeing. You know? So in that sense, the endless journey, I mean, there's some people, there was this one person, his name was, I believe it was Dr. Almas. And in an interview, he was asked, he was from the, you can say, inspired by the Sufi tradition, and he was asked, tell me about your history. And he said, there's a part of me that has like the individual history from the moment I was born till now. And then there's a part of me which is my universal history, a component to my intelligence that has been here from the beginning of the universe to its end, right? But the end of the universe is endless because it's endlessly changing. It's as if everything changes. We consider that as sort of death, but change doesn't change. So it's as if like change is changeless, or it's as if death is deathless, you know? And he said So the first part, the individual history, the body's life. The second history, the universal history, the mind's life, but a mind that surpasses this life, this body's domain of reception. And then he said, there's a part of me that doesn't have a history. As if this dude is saying, like, okay, you see me now, that's one part of me. There's a part of me that it's like has been seeing the universe, and then there's a part of me that is not in space and time. Do you know, it's as if it's like, you know, it can't have space, can't have time. And this is where I'm saying, what if there is a veil? What if space is a sort of veil? This whole time, our attitude to space has been nothing, but can the concept of nothing exist? It only exists in accordance to something being there, then its absence. But if we wonder about the origin, right? Do you know what I mean? It's as if, like, when we think of space, it's like you think of a container, right? It's as if the space in your house, it's based on its walls. But when we think about the space of the universe, we are at least theorizing, like, we can't see the edge of the universe, it might have walls, but if it doesn't have walls, it in some sense can't be space, can't be the definition of how would I say it? It's nothing. Do you know? And the clue is here. It's not a thing. You know, it cannot be understood in accordance to things. You know, even though our definition of space is as if like when a cup is full, there's no space in it. You know, or the space is full, but when the cup is empty, it's like there's space. This idea of space being a veil, I'm wondering about it in different ways. Where, sure, it's like a curtain or it's like a coin. But it could be that this whole time, our bodies are moving in our minds, and we think that the mind is in the body. If we define what we are in accordance to boundaries, limits, and that's how we're saying we're finite. It's as if there is something that has shape, and then the shape goes away and we're like, that person is no more. Now, if we think of space as being shapeless, that means if the shape is being attributed to the finite, could it be that the space is infinite? And if the space is alive, something that we can't, it's very hard to wrap your head around it. But if space is alive, this whole time, as if it's a field of it, we're particles being moved by this field, and we think we're just the intelligence in it. Let's say, similar to how Dr. Almaz in that interview had said that there's a universal memory. Let's consider that there's finite individual human beings. They're living. They're like, oh no, there's death. It's like, oh yeah, there's life, But suddenly midway, through this game of meaning through the change of shapes, we notice that change is happening within us. That means we are the space, and like everything that's changing in the space is being watched by the space, as if there's a mind to the body and there's a mind to the universal body. And beyond the universal body, it's like, as the poet Rumi says, a sort of evolution to a point that no mind can ever conceive. In my notes, there was an episode, I probably will give it in the future, where I wrote it here. Did we exist before we exist? And I feel if we did exist, that existence would not be in accordance to shape. In psychology, and especially in mysticism, there is a distinction between the observed and the observer. Most people who identify with the observed, they don't feel they have free will. This is why deep down as creatures, we have this urge towards, there are philosophers such as Michel Foucault, who we talked about, and some other philosophers also, I think Hegel and some other ones, who they thought that the idea of the self, this self that is making decisions and in some sense moving in the world, is a social construct. It's because that we're in society that we are a self, as if the person was in nature, they would descend from selfhood. They would go into like this rawness of animal. But if we consider this notion of the self, and that it is in some sense beyond the social construct, it's as if an unknown force is journeying through, is moving matter, and as the matter moves to the limits, to the limitations of the matter, there is worldhood and journeying and all this, And it could be that this whole time there is infinite being and finite doing. That means in order for there to be a journey, there has to be a journeyer. Now, in this episode, I'm talking about the type or the way that journeyer is. If it is identifying with the known object, then it's a physical journey, as if immortality till the end of time. We're going to conquer the whole universal sector. But if it is if this observer surpasses a thing, then what is an endless journey is space being aware of itself. There are moments where, of course, I identify with my body as I'm still a physical human being. When I go to the grocery store, I'm a materialist. But moments where I sit still, or suddenly I notice, wait a minute, my body is as if my mind, or this awareness that the mind provides, like the glow of a lantern or a candle, it's as if this glow is a space, and the body is part of this space alongside the world. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's as if that space, Papaji made a significant reference to this. He said that Papaji is this enlightened mystic yogi from India, a disciple of Sri Ramana Maharshi. And there was this guy from, I believe, France, that had come to him, that had traveled there, and he's like, Papaji, give me like the enlightened truth, something like that, and Papaji looked at him and he's like, okay, and Papaji asks him a question, and Papaji says, Can you tell me that in all the moments of your life that you have traveled and you have journeyed, as if you were in France, you journeyed to India, now you're in India, you're going to journey back to France. Tell me, in all the physical journeys of your life, has there been something that hasn't moved this whole time that you have been living as some sort of intelligent creature, you know? And Papaji goes on to explain and point that in some sense the awareness to existence, that means think of it as if consciousness pure, like the pure, how would I say it, like like as if things in space change but the space doesn't. You know, and Papaji was in some sense sharing to this man that in every day, in every moment that you have traveled and journeyed, the awareness that I am, that there is something being regardless of what you do, that is it. And it surpasses the subjective notion of the observer and the objective notion of the body. It is the presence, the unknown presence beyond any known ability of the personality. And this was such a huge point, especially in Vedic thought, because there were people known as sadhus, and sadhus were like truth seekers in the path of yoga, and once they went into, became more meditative and aware of what's going on in this realm, they would attain certain powers. I think the term is CDs or siddhas, I don't know. So anyways, they would attain these powers, and in Vedic wisdom, the advice that was given to all these beings that attained powers, you know, was that you should not use them, because regardless of the display of power or any sort of system of expressionism, there is a truth to what, you know. So it's as if to the known object, immortality will be, in some sense, the result of the equation of the endless journey to never, you know, to the end of never, you know. If we think of it as the mind in some sense is endless animation. It's as if the body is a straight line. If we attain immortality, the mind is like a sine wave. You know, that means it's like, the question is like, does an immortal being need to sleep? If somehow there was some technology where we had energy, our energy levels would not diminish with the being sleep. And let's say there was no repercussions to the body either. You know, it's as if there is a journeyer that is something in the space. There is a journeyer that is watching all the journeyers in the space, all the physical journeyers. And then there is in some sense the presence of the unknown witness. And I will tell you guys, there's moments where I mean I sometimes go into these, not in an intense way, like it's really momentary, but sometimes I go into an existential panic attack, you know? And this existential panic attack is me being like, where am I? But I'm not wondering yet about just the answers I've been given. It's as if beyond any answer you've given, a question finds you, and that question can't be touched by a conditional answer, you know? And in those moments, you know, I've had moments where I would say there has been a moment where it was like a sort of prayer for me. And in that moment, it was as if, like, rather than praying to truth, to an inconceivable truth, it was more like I realized the truth is inconceivable. And so it's as if this whole time, this infinite unknown witness, that means the universal intelligence, It's like the unknown is watching the known change. The unknown is changelessly watching the known change. And it's as if when we realize we are unknown, like as if Carl Jung spoke about the consciousness of the individual consciousness, and the collective unconscious. And the collective unconscious was such a mighty idea because it is what everybody doesn't know. Do you know? And now I am saying, as a sort of comment on Mr. Young's view, that the unknown is us, that we are the collective unconscious. We're not an ant on the hill, we are the ant and the hill. So if we are infinite beings, or should I say that being is infinite regardless of what we do, it's as if a remembrance, the yogis would say, when one incarnates into the realm, they require to find their divine remembrance. This was actually something they would say. And the divine remembrance was like, some people thought it was like the memory of all their past lives, as if the Buddha, when he had attained a certain level of enlightenment, it's as if he knew all his past lives and whatnot. But I would say the divine remembrance truly is the unknown. And the unknown is this, it's, you know what it is? It's like, to a personality, it is the scariest thing. To a presence, it is the simplest contentment. Even the measure of a person's knowledge and wisdom is not based on how much they know. Socrates said this. Socrates said the only true wisdom is to know that you know nothing. Why? Why would a person who knew so much say that? Because he realized not only it's just too big to know, you know, it's that in some sense, even if we know, it keeps going. That means not only is the universe huge, but it's changing. Like, oh my God, are we trying to measure a changing, an infinitely changing vastness? Like, you know, it's as if we'd be like, who has the time for that? And then some engineer would be like, AI does, go AI. You know, it's as if like we, you know how like in some shows you see like, you know, a posh English family, like, you know, they have these hounds and they release the hounds to go search for ducks or whatever. You know, it's as if an engineer, a very profound engineer in the future, is gonna be like, all right, AI, go on, boy, you know, go on, explore and measure as much as the observable universe grants. Now, this is where, guys, I would say this is, you can say this is part of Mr.Withinian thought. So this is what I'm getting some, like, see, some in life, what does our human intelligence do? It notices a problem, attempts to answer it. If it can answer it, the problem dissolves like a vitamin. What do you call it? Like one of those vitamins that you throw in water and it dissolves in the water. The problem can dissolve if the answer meets the problem. But if there is a problem that doesn't meet the answer, at least what the person can do is start asking questions. Do you know? It's as if you have let's say one question, and you had one answer, and you tried that answer and it didn't solve the question, and you don't know what other answer it would be. You can keep having answers to the same state of the problem, or you can try to see different angles to the problem. And for me, when I wonder about the mystery of life, again, I'll emphasize this. These are the clues. One, first of all, why are we mortal, and why is the world so big? Second thing, do you know, why is it changing? Why is it changing? Why isn't the universe just a photograph? Why is it a film, right? So the film nature of the moving nature of the realm, this is where actions become meaningful. It's as if there's a work to be done, but we don't know what this work is. Please tell me this is on mute. Okay. There's a work to be done. Okay, so that's what one clue of an infinitely changing universe suggests. But the nature of that work, whether it's just the observer or the observed, that's another thing. Now the second clue is that it could be that it is not for a mortal being, that it could be that our attention in this moment is misidentifying with the wrong rules to a game that surpasses the sensory. That means imagine like a basketball player in a soccer field, and the basketball player suddenly holds the ball in his hand, and people are like, excuse me, what are you doing? And the basketball player, it's like, but I see these rules though. These are the rules I'm familiar with. Do you see? So there could be a completely different, framework of realism behind everything. So the clue of the vastness of the universe could be that it's actually meant for eyes that are that vast. Because what else would it imply? It would imply either the universe is not made for man, or it implies man is not this little thing he's identifying. He's actually the macro rather than the micro viewer. So, guys, my attention has come to the chat section while I drink some coffee. But the real question is, who is drinking the coffee? So, thanks everybody for entering the chat section. Feel free to share where in the world you are and what time it is for you that you're listening to this talk. So there's a question. Dawn says, what about the art? In the chat section, Dawn says, what about the art of true love if you're just having sex in it? See, I'm not saying like that sex could be like without love, usually there is like, I'm not talking about universal abuse. I'm talking about, like, of course there has to be love or the person doesn't like to exist. That's the common thing we find, that where there isn't decency and a certain level of care for each other's life force, like that's inner extinction, right? Like that's the issue with violence and animalhood, and this is why we became civilized, to step out of the jungle and started creating laws and systems where we could acknowledge the more complex dimensions of ourselves, So hopefully there will be love. Without love, life is just a machine, to be honest. And there's different kinds of love. A person can be in love with themselves. They can be in love with other people. They can be in love with the nature of their world. That was true mysticism. The mystics were known as lovers of the unknown, where everybody was fearing the unknown. It's like, I don't want to see the unknown. Give me a shape, give me a system, give me an ideology. I feel better now. But the mystic was like, wait a minute. What if it's the unknown that is the unknown truth? Like it is the truth. The one thing that we're not considering, the unknown is it. Not that the truth is unknown. The unknown is the truth. Now, I've written some things here, and it's getting dark, so let me just raise the brightness of the sun for a minute. is the only purpose of an infinite being to create. And I've written here there's an energy problem and a memory problem. So in the consideration of, let's say, the vastness of intelligence, I mean, physically, the endless journey, of course, it has to do with our energy levels. But if energy can't be created and destroyed, and we cultivate a relationship with the origin of energy, or I shouldn't say with the origin of energy, with the presence of energy. So energy problem goes away. The memory problem is how much we as an organism can accumulate, right? And now if there's a universal memory, that means there is an intelligence that surpasses like a storage device or a storage. For me, this is the title of tonight's episode is just the biggest. I feel like all philosophers will arrive here. They will arrive to the realization of what do we do with infinite continuity. And really the options are left that you either transcend or you play the game till the end of time, right? But if we're multidimensional, it could be that one dimension of us endlessly plays the game. You know what it is? It's like rather than we are a player, let's say a soccer player on a soccer field, on a football field, we are the player, we are the coach, we are the field all at once. The field has no journey. It's just the field where all journeys are happening within. The player is journeying and the coach is watching all the players at once. Or, to the degree that, it's not a perfect metaphor, but you know what I mean. I said it in an episode before this one. Alan Watts has this quote where he says, imagine going to sleep and never waking up, and imagine waking up having never gone to sleep. If we wake up having never gone to sleep, that solves the gigantic nature of the world and what it's for. Why is there, you know what it is? It's like the human being is consuming information, right? And think of information as meals, right? And it's as if there's endless meals on the table, but the human being can only eat one to the capacity of the brain, right? So if there's a component to us that surpasses the brain, then, and its capacity is universal, it's like as if it's watching the universe, on a screen, then in some sense we can finally find the meaning of the world, at least the infinite world, why there's an infinite world. And strangely, it wouldn't be personified. So there's the moment multidimensionality comes into one's framework, it's as if that's the moment where we're considering when does intelligence surpass its human identity. Right now, I am limited to the human framework, right? I mean, I'm a human being talking about, what human beings are doing, and I'm using a language invented by human beings. But if I wanted to wonder about beyond human framework, not only it will go towards poetry, but it will hit the language threshold, and that's where the dehumanized phenomenology, dehumanized numenology can be observed. And it's as if you consider an immortal being, a being that cannot, in some sense, it physically can't, or I shouldn't say physical, but let's say some sort of immortality, the only thing left is creativity, and creativity doesn't arise without passion. without wanting to bring something into the moment. That means there's some things that enter your moment, and there's some things think of it as if there's an inner realm and an outer realm. There's some things that from the outer realms enter your inner realms, and there's some things that from your inner realms step out of the outer realms. When Mother Teresa saw poverty, it was as if from her inner realm some sort of love for the suffering mankind arose. Just like the roots of a tree are in the soil, the roots of our perception potentially may surpass the limits of the observable universe. There are moments where I consider that the body is in a singular dimension. The mind is multidimensional. And the watcher of all this is void. Again, going back to this idea that space, through a singular object, is accessing multidimensional subjects. And the only way it can manage it is if it's beyond this, right? That means it's like, let's say if you want to push a vehicle, push a car, it's like you can't be in the car and push the car, right? Let's say a car where the engine doesn't work. So it's like you can't push the car from inside. So you got to step out of it and then push it. Now, if we consider that the body and thoughts, the ideas that arise, are persona, the ever-changing persona of the individual, this persona, if the object was seen as a vehicle and a subject was seen as a vehicle, it's as if when the attention steps out of both vehicles, it can manage it. And it could be that there has never been smart or stupid people. There has just been people who have not realized, have not stepped out of a subjective vehicle. So their framework is just bound to how the past promised the future would be. You see, to me, it's first of all too unknown to measure. But we can't do nothing here. Even if we may potentially be nothing, but it's like we can't do nothing. It's like there's something happening here, some sort of event of intelligence. It's as if behind our eyes we are the life of space. In front of our eyes we are the life of matter. It's as if it's this force, and this force literally it's like a river dividing into two. Or a better metaphor would be, it's as if the mind is like a universal river, and the body is like a planetary log in this river that's being kind of taken away by the river. And when we look at human life, how many variables that we know are out of our control, right? Like the person has the free will. This is the hard problem of consciousness, where it points to that why is it that we are conscious of certain perceptions but are not conscious of other perceptions? Why is it that we can consciously raise our hand, but why is it that we can't suddenly shapeshift? Or why is it that like the genetics can't have a horizontal transfer? Or why is it like we can't just raise our hand and like all buildings rise in the air and we're like, that's what a Sky City would look like. Why can't we do that? So there's certain components to life intelligence that are in our control and are not in our control. The elements that are not in our control, some people attribute it to a creator, or we attribute it to ourselves that we still don't have control, or in some sense it is another element You know, it's as if there is another dimension of livelihood going on here that we're not aware. You know, and one of the most bizarre things about the notion that if we are an infinite intelligence, it means there has never been death. And it's as if every action of life is just echoing as a wave in the universe. You know, it's as if it's a blank canvas, and whatever is drawn on it, it's drawn. It's there. Now, it could be that it's overlaid by various levels of phenomenology, but like the influence of what was there is there. Sorry guys, this was on mute and I was just speaking. Pretty much I took the talk towards how I had brought up Michel Foucault, and how Michel Foucault had studied systems of power, and he saw two dimensions to power, as if he called it the positive and negative power, but also different levels to it. Think of it in another sense, where it's as if there is biopower, where how the bodies are being controlled you know, by the environment of the system. And he's also had this notion of disciplinary power and this notion of, I think that's what he called it, but the notion of it was that even if you're an intellectual in society, in the world, it's as if you are conditioned. And so this conditioning, which is being the beginning alphabet of your perception, you know, or the building blocks of your perception, it's as if that is limited, then everything you come from, everything you produce from that framework is limited as well. It's all about intelligence and its dimensions, and how multidimensional the species wants to be. What I've noticed is that the religious mentality wants singularity. You know, I mean, this is one thing I would say the atheist and theist have in common, which I would say the philosophers, some philosophers, continental philosophers, are just staring from a distance, and mystics too, where it's as if a sort of singular meaning on life, as if like the atheistic principle, as if it's just stuff, you know, no other sentence is allowed, you know. And so from the religious perspective, it's as if it's all God, no other approaches, views allowed. It could be that once the species surpasses the desire for things to have meaning in only one way, we open up to a multidimensional way of being where we no longer freak out over collectivism. You know, this world is so vast that why wouldn't it create collective beings? Why wouldn't space be alive if matter is? It's as if a fish in the ocean and the currents of the ocean are moving it, and the fish is like, yo, am I the only thing moving here? And it's like, no, there's more movements going on behind the scenes of the observable universe. So, I guess where I would like to take this episode as a finale of it is that I would like to see all curious human beings that are still wondering about the world, first of all, realize that we are in the post understanding of the mind. That means we are anybody right now. It's like you explore the nature of intelligence, you will be a pioneer, because the species doesn't know what exactly how to shape it. A changing system. It's as if we don't know how to take how it's like we can't define a film by one photographic frame of the film. And all belief systems and ideological systems that are fixed and have a set design, it's as if they're photographs. It's very rare for an ideological system to be like a film ever changing, because then the ideological system can't exist the same way it has, right? That's one thing we don't see in religious ideology, right? In religious ideology, or not just religious ideology, in a lot of exoteric institutions, it's as if like Lord of the Rings, one ring to rule them all, one story to define it all. It's fear. Fear is causing us to limit the limitless. That means as long as we have fear of death, we have no choice other than to hold on to something, or enter some sort of system of ideology. So we're like, oh yeah, now life has meaning. That means how many human beings can walk in the unknown as the unknown? That is the question. And I feel when the species reaches that point, we would surpass perhaps even the desire for an advanced civilization as a sort of return to the desire of advanced being. And if being is already advanced, if it's surpassing space and time, it's as if we are all doing things to realize we have been being it the whole time. It's as if there is no one living, their life is just being. Do you see like the intensity of that idea? I would like to see all advanced communicators in the universal sector to begin wondering, all philosophers in the realm to begin wondering, that what do we do with an infinite journey, and what is the significance of everything we have built so far in an infinite context? That means we have been conditioned. I mean, it's like it wasn't even our choice, it was just nature's design. That we have been conditioned into agreeing that we are finite more than infinite because of how the body is changing. But if there is an unknown, again, watcher of the known object and subject, it's as if, what would the life of the infinite look like? Would it even be limited to sight? The species has blindfolded itself with the linguistic simulation, with the simulation of language. Now, this doesn't mean language is a bad thing. Language is a technology. And the technology can be misused, or it can be properly used, or it can be updated, and all of this applies. We need an archaic revival of a mystical urge to wonder about the framework of everything and nothing. Because from the framework of everything, what is nothing? Is nothing part of everything? And from the framework of nothing, could everything be nothing? Do you know? And I've in my own approach so far, I've developed a model. I call it Ring of the Absent Heaven. It's 4 symbols: 0, 1, 2, infinity. And I remember saying that 0 is the father of singularity. 0 is the father of 1. 1, the singular, is the mother of duality, and duality is the father of infinity. That means the moment you have a dualistic system, think of it as if 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, endless. It can go infinite, even though it may have limitations, but it can go infinite. It's as if we need 0 to have 1 to understand 1, or wonder about, as if when 1 is gone, 1 minus 1, what is that? So we need 0, and then as a precursor for 1, precondition, and then we need 1 for duality. That means nobody can experience good and bad if there isn't a notion of a singular self. And then from this notion of a self in the world, which is dualistic framework, it's as if infinite relationships are arising from this. It could be that the self is journeying in the world infinitely, and it could be that the world is journeying into the unknown self infinitely. And so the mystery of the source of intelligence is it's waiting there for us. It's like change is a giant question mark. And an answer is an exclamation point, as if we ignore the question mark, just straighten the curvature and think like we gave an answer in one moment of space and time, as if one frame of a film again became an answer. No way. It's experiential, unknown, let's say for now, journey, as long as there's a journey. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful, and I encourage anyone, whoever you are, you can join the Discord community, because it's one lifetime. And it's the Discord community, School of Athens 2.0. It's a global, think of it as like the School of Athens was this idea where philosophers would come from around the world to have conversations. So think of it as if the School of Athens 2.0, the Discord community, is like a cyber School of Athens. It's like, if human beings don't communicate, we are not taking advantage of what we have, that if all the other species realize its immensity, they would desire as well. It's as if we've been given the golden ticket to being able to comprehend intelligence's movement to itself, as itself, and beyond. And as the great Aldous Huxley says, there are things known and things unknown, and in between are the doors of perception. And Mr.Within would say that door is a revolving door. For an infinite being, as long as it's conditional, has no greater purpose than to explore creation and then become the creator of an endless exploration. It's as if we are in our consciousness, then we are our consciousness, then our consciousness is in. It's as if it's like the greater, another dimension of unknowns comes in. Every day that passes by, I just know that life is bringing something new and is taking something away. And I truly wonder about what will happen to our species. And it is left to the responsibility of a godly nature, godly level of responsibility, not just the responsibility for the ant on the hill, but the responsibility for the whole ant hill. That is how advanced civilizations are designed. First, the ants remember why they are there. Then, once the common aim is there, it begins. Thank you for listening. Much blessings and namaste.